Hello, everyone. Welcome to the
Yeah.
Unnamed podcast. And if you're listening, we probably have a name by now because it means that we've actually put it out there. Do you want to say hello, Eamon?
Hello, Eamon. Yeah, hopefully we're gonna have like loads of a cool name, but they're all taken. It's crazy.
One of the things that it was kind of sobering when I was looking for a name was that A, like literally every name is taken, but B, it also means that like there's so many podcasts on the same topic. So both of those
Yeah,
things were quite sobering.
yeah. That to be fair, I couldn't find a whole lot on this particular cryptid, which was I guess that was encouraging. But yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
Well,
Lot of interest in the old cryptozoology.
yeah, so the podcast is basically for people who listen to, or are interested in cryptozoology, weird shit like UFOs. We'll probably do aliens, will we, Eamon?
We'd have to do the old aliens.
Zombies, we'll probably do zombies, will we?
The old Haitian zombie curse. Yeah, I'd say we'll do that as well.
Yeah, basically everything that's kind of off the wall, and a bit of a disclaimer as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that we actually like believe in this stuff, but just that it's fun to talk about, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing about it is like, just to have fun with it. Like I really want all of this stuff to be real, but I'm aware that it's not, or the most of it isn't.
Well, the thing is, yeah, I think with a lot of this stuff, and we'll run into it as we do more episodes, is like most of it, I suppose, could be real, and that's what makes it interesting. Like there is no way
Mm,
to outright discredit it, only if you sort of, just logically sort of say, okay, well, no, it doesn't exist because I can't see anything like that around me. So then you go, okay, fair enough. But hopefully at least some of the evidence for some of these things that we present will be compelling enough for you to sort of, entertain it more than you would normally, I guess.
yeah, exactly. And I think like people always love the mystery of, not knowing like, oh, is there this sort of crazy dinosaur thing out in the middle of the jungle somewhere? And it's the fun of going like, yeah, well, maybe, if we actually found it, it'd be like, ah, it's a bit shy, isn't it?
Yeah, well,
We wouldn't be
that's
happy.
it. It'd be shit after like a week. You'd be like, oh yeah, okay, well, it's just another fucking shit, yo. But yeah, that's
Exactly.
that you're saying.
I was just saying, yeah, you got to go to work on Monday. Oh, did you hear about the big dinosaur? And they're like, listen, you're on your final warning, and if you fuck up again, you're fired. The dinosaur's
Literally,
not going to help you pay for the groceries.
and it's funny because like we are literally. I mean, part of the reason that this podcast is even happening is because we're idle during COVID-19, which, even a year ago would have sounded like fantasy. The scenario that we're in right now would have been like, literally an entertaining tale. It would have been like something you'd see in a film. And yeah,
Mm.
we're in the middle of it now and it's already boring and old.
Yeah, I think it's like anything like that. Like if there were zombies or there were dinosaurs, or whatever, when it's actually happening, it's kind of like, oh shit, now you're
Shite.
just in it. Like it's not mysterious and cool. It's just how like now what happens next.
Yeah, I want global pandemics to be mysterious and cool again, to be honest with you.
Yeah, do you remember when they used to be mysterious and cool? And you'd be like, what's your plan for when the zombies attack? And now it's just like your plan was queue up outside of Tesco for 4 hours and
Literally.
buy shopping for your grandparents. Like,
Buy shopping and like in my case buy Lego so that I can entertain myself for 2 hours. I literally bought Star Wars
I
Lego.
tell you.
Just the
I'd say
grim.
one thing, they brought out that new Final Fantasy game at the right time, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah, it'd be funny though if like Rick Grimes broke into my house. He came in and found me like playing with Lego and was able to just rob the house, while I'm upstairs or whatever. Like that's the reality of
Yeah.
it. It's not like sexy.
No, not at all. Not even remotely.
Yeah, it's just it's fairly grim. But I think we should talk about our cryptid for today, which is a
Yes.
bit of a mouthful. I think most people who actually download this episode don't know how to pronounce it. I'd say at least if they're friends of ours, they haven't been exposed to Mokele Mbembe um, in their life. So Mokele Mbembe is, I suppose is a Congolese. Would it be?
Yeah, I think you said Congolese, I think.
Yeah, and that translates to one who stops the flow of rivers. So I suppose in our notes here we have an intro music note, which we don't have intro music yet, so that won't be coming in unless we can come up with like some type of jingle about every cryptid that we do.
Oh yeah, we could do like intro per week, like it's just a song about Mokele Mbembe. What does Mbembe rhyme with? Like maybe, I don't know.
You could do
For some
Take
reason.
Mbembe away. Bow now.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that could work. Take Mbembe away.
Yeah, so we could do that one. But yeah, do you want to tell people what Mokele Mbembe actually was or is?
Yeah, so yeah, Mokele Mbembe, is he real? You decide. Um, they also call him the Nsanga. I think that's how
Okay.
you say it, is it?
Yeah.
Nsanga.
Yeah.
So it's basically a dinosaur-like animal of Central Africa, sauropod like. Um, Smooth skin, the feet have hooked claws, it's amphibious, and it feeds on hippos. Apparently the tracks are never seen according to the locals. But basically it if you know what a brontosaurus is, or like the first dinosaur you see in Jurassic Park, that's basically what they're saying is out there.
Littlefoot as well.
Littlefoot, yeah, Littlefoot was probably a good bit cuter.
Yes. Yes. But it's basically a giant Littlefoot, really, isn't it?
Yeah, giant Littlefoot, like a Bigfoot, but not a Bigfoot, because that's a different thing altogether.
And so I think the reason why Mokele Mbembe is interesting, because I mean, if they said that there was a dinosaur down the street or in, around the corner somewhere, it wouldn't be compelling because, well, that it's civilized, people are around, and it would be widely reported. But Mokele is from the Congo, which is like, such a massive area that it's even to this day, undiscovered creatures get found all the time. So it is quite an interesting area to have a dinosaur. And it's not like Loch Ness either. I mean, Loch Ness, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about Loch Ness, but it's quite a civilized area,
Yeah, totally. And it's like a lake as well. You know what I mean? Like it's a big lake, but it's a lake.
Yeah.
So things not getting, well, I guess if it can walk on land or whatever, it's getting in or out. But yeah, like you think about this area of rainforest, like 80% of it is completely uncharted. It's like dense with trees, and it's constantly flooded forest floor. It's like it just it's exactly what you'd expect when you think of like a wild jungle.
Yeah, it's completely like almost uninhabitable, and it's very wild. Like this is not your local walking trail. This is somewhere that's completely out there. There's actually, when I was researching the episode, I came across a tour for Lake Tele, which is where Mokele is supposed to live. And it just sounds crazy. Like it's just even to just get there, like on the tour website, they're like, yeah, this is shit. You don't want to do this. You'll probably have a miserable time, but give us 15 grand and we'll do it, So it's literally that.
I mean, that's a salesman. Listen, this is going to be really shit. It's also going to be 15 grand. Just give me the money and we're going to do it. And people are showing up. Like, that's incredible. That's incredible.
What did he say? It was like, he was saying it's this isn't like Disneyland, it's like Jurassic Park, is what they said on the thing. Which is interesting,
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I went to a couple of years ago, I went to Peru, and we did a couple of those like walking tours.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was nothing like as wild as the Congolese jungle.
Mm-hmm.
But like they were tough going, man. Even just like we went on to Lake Titicaca and all that, and it's the same kind of thing, like tribal people who live on reeds on a lake bringing you into their gaff to show you what's going on, because that's how they make money. So these little pygmies out in I don't know if you're allowed to say that. Are you little pygmies? They're small though.
Those
yeah,
cute,
so these
cute
pygmies
little
out
pygmies.
Cute little pygmies, you could, you go out, you get a free pygmy with every excursion. That's worth 15 grand. But yeah, they bring you out, like I mean, it's an industry. Do you know what I mean? So the lads, I suppose, know a lot of what you want to see, so they're trying to point you in that direction.
Yeah, it's also, it should be noted that in this quite wild area that like in the past decade, 300 new species have been discovered, 71 in 2019, and some of those are the poisonous monkeys. Well, that's actually, sorry, that's not in just the Congo. That's global, isn't it? That's not just in the Congo. We have that down as a
Yeah, yeah.
motor.
This is like, yeah, I think the poisonous monkeys are from Borneo. I think there's
Poison
probably a
monkeys.
Latin name, but I couldn't. Poisonous monkeys of Borneo sounds terrifying.
Yeah, pretty much a cat eyes carnival fish. I have to look up these. These could be things that we end up talking about in future episodes, to be quite honest.
Yeah, the cat eyes carnival fish. He's cool looking. He's just got a giant like lizard eye, like a
Okay.
cartoony lizard eye, but just it takes up his whole face. It's kind of crazy looking.
Right, right. And it has happened in the past as well, where there are undiscovered animals that end up being real, or there's animals that people think are fake that end up being real, and there's such a thing as a living fossil, which is basically an animal that was originally discovered as a fossil. That archaeologists of the time were like, oh, this is some prehistoric fish or whatever, and then they find the most notable example of that would be a coelacanth, which, if you aren't familiar with a coelacanth, they're like a really weird looking fish that kind of look like they have an armored plating. They're really prehistoric looking. Straight away you'd think that there's something out of like a Jurassic Park film, and those do exist, so that makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I know that there's some, or probably the best example outside the one you just talked about there, is the okapi, which is like a cloven hoofed mammal. It's got zebra stripes on its legs, and it's from the Congo as well. So in keeping with the Congo theme, but basically, in the 19th century, people talked about there being an African unicorn. That lived in the Congo, and people were saying like, hardly, that's not real. They called it like a mysterious donkey animal. Dr. David Livingstone in the late 1880s, when he was going on an expedition there. So basically everyone was saying, yeah, that's not, it was a cryptid. And it was in 1901 that it was actually properly documented. And it's been identified as a relative of the giraffe. And if you see it, it has kind of a double sort of a horn kind of a thing, similar to maybe a deer or something like that. But it's quite a lot bigger. And its hind legs and front legs have these strange kind of zebra stripes on them. And its body is brown, its neck is brown, and its face is kind of white. And it is kind of a strange looking animal,
It looks like if you were to paint, like it looks kind of like a shrunken down giraffe in a way, with like zebra markings, and it's also got, yeah, like you said, a little bit of deer to it as well.
Yeah, it's a very nice looking animal. It's just it looks like it's kind of a bit of all animals and sort of none of them at the same time. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a strange one, but it still very much looks like an animal. Whereas some of these purported like the chupacabra, Bigfoot, all those, like you could make the argument that they look like a guy in a suit, whereas this looks like an animal.
Well, yeah, but I think as we get on in the episode as well, I think we'll discover that maybe Mokele had or has a bit of an element of every animal sort of amalgamated into one. But the first mention of Mokele, it was actually in the 1700s somewhere. But then that was kind of, obviously it wasn't in modern times, and it would have been like, I suppose you'd say, less official. Once we got to civilized society, a lot of these tales became circulated around the world more frequently. I think the 1700s one was more of just a written tale. But the first mention of Mokele that in modern times is in 1909, and it was by a guy called Carl Hagenbeck, who is actually a really interesting guy in his own right. He, in some ways, I suppose you could describe him as credible, but then in other ways, entirely not. He was the founder of zoos, but as all lads back then they're at like crazy shit. He had human zoos were one of the things that he had at the time. So Hagenbeck was a guy that you kind of wonder, was he just making up stuff about Mokele to sort of big himself up? But he claimed he had received reports of a huge monster, half elephant, half dragon, inhabiting the interior of Rhodesia. Hagenbeck thought the animal was some kind of dinosaur similar to a brontosaurus and unsuccessfully searched for it. His claim made headlines in newspapers around the world and helped launch the legend of Mokele Mbembe. So he was one of the sort of grandfathers of this whole thing. Now, what do you reckon? Like, what did he have to gain by sort of talking about Mokele, if anything?
Yeah, well, apparently, like, back in the early 20th century, reports of any of these big dinosaur-like creatures caused something akin to like a sensation, basically, in the mass media. So you think of those little, those boys that had the little caps on that'd be saying, "Hey, sir, buy a paper, 2 shillings," or whatever. So like the front page of that might be, Hagenbach says giant dinosaur is real, and that that would sell obviously a lot of papers. It's almost similar to clickbait type stuff there. I guess the other thing is, because you're in the early 20th century, I mean, the script is really unwritten about what is and isn't out there, especially in Africa. Like with tourism today, we can go onto YouTube and see like a quick video of a jungle or something like that. But like back then, like people didn't have oranges because they didn't grow locally, so realistically, like everything was possible back then. So I think there was a big thing about just sensationalizing these ideas. They'd found bones, so it entirely made sense that maybe there was an existing dinosaur out in the jungle somewhere.
Yeah, and as well, like when you go back even further, like in like ancient Roman times and things like that, it was reported back then that they would actually find fossils, like kind of like accidentally. It obviously wasn't a case of Dr. Alan Grant going out and fucking with a little brush and a pickaxe, but like they'd actually find them, say in some type of formation or something, and
Yeah.
at the time they just thought they were literally dragons. They were like, oh, this is a dragon fossil.
Yeah, and I guess when you think about it as well, like let's just say, we talk about the UK, for example, and you have Wales, one of their dominions, and like that the Welsh flag has a dragon on it. So whether it's folklore or did something sort of prehistoric exist there hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands and millions of years ago, and there's something like a lot of folklore kind of weaves its way into Mokele Mbembe as well. We'll kind of see later. But there is a lot of things. I mean, I imagine the early 20th century, just all these things are possible. Like to date, I suppose. So we're on 2020 now. There's been more than 50 expeditions to that region of the Congo, and we have no real scientific evidence. However, there was a large claw-shaped footprint that was recorded by a French missionary in 1776.
Yeah, that's the guy.
And other people have found similar kind of things. Yeah, so that's if that's happening in the 18th century and at the start of the 20th century, they're actually able to visit these places more regularly or stuff like that. It's, I guess, like you could understand why people would think it could be real,
Yeah, and I suppose it would be one of those things that you'd have to look into and research. But like, I wonder as well, back then, would expeditions into these places get funded if they created crazy stories? Like, you'd imagine that there was probably financial backing to be had. So like these sort of explorer characters who go out on adventures to basically get animals for their own zoos. Like, you'd wonder if they said, "Oh yeah, there's a dinosaur too," so that they could sort of put a few fucking okapis in a box and bring them back.
Yeah.
Like, there's
and
a
I'd
guy.
say as well.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just saying, with the zoos, there must be guys who are stupid rich who are shareholders in these zoos or whatever. They probably fund the expeditions and then take a big cut of money with all the patronage it encourages by having this cool new animal.
Yeah, there's a guy.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, there's a few reports that came from guys that I thought were kind of credible, and those were like the military people, because especially back then, if you're talking about like the early 1900s, those military people were fairly serious people, that they'd seen some shit as well. I think generally speaking, like a military source would be a lot more credible than just you or I, because generally speaking, they're a lot more no nonsense than what we are. Of course, there's always outliers, but this guy, Lieutenant Paul Gratz, had an interesting account here from 1911. He said that the crocodile is found only in very isolated specimens in Lake Bangweulu. Hope I got that right. Except in the mouths of the large rivers at the north. In the swamp lives the insanga. much feared by the natives, a degenerate saurian, a degenerate. I was laughing at that. Which one?
Smoking fags and like drinking cans.
which one might well confuse with the crocodile, were it not that its skin has no scales and its toes are armed with claws. I did not succeed in shooting Nsanga, but on the island of Mboala, I came across some strips of its skin. So from that sort of account, you might think maybe a hippo, maybe. It's like it's sort of, no scales, kind of like a crocodile. So something that lives in the water with no scales.
Yeah, especially when you just see the hippo's head, I suppose, if it didn't come out of the water. The way they just like have the snout kind of above the water and then they'll drop down. So yeah, you can see why it would be confused with a crocodile.
There's another guy, if you want to talk about Ludwig von Lauschwitz, I think is Lauschnitz is the way to say his name, I think is the easier. So if you want to tell the lads about that.
Right, I will. I might just call him von Stein because that just seems a lot easier. Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Lauschnitz. So von Stein was ordered to conduct a survey of German colonies in what now would be Cameroon in 1913. And he heard stories of an enormous reptile called Mokele Mbembe, which was alleged to live in the jungles. So he included a description about that in his official report. And in his report, von Stein sort of worded it with caution, knowing that it just seemed completely unbelievable, even in this early 20th century. But he thought the tales were credible. He trusted the native guides and believed in basically the stories that they had related to him. But they had a lot of the same kind of details. So it was never formally published. But he basically was quoted as writing, "The animal is said to be of a brownish grey colour with a smooth skin. Its size is approximately that of an elephant, at least that of a hippopotamus. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it's a horn. A few spoke about a long muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack the vessels at once and to kill the crews, but without eating the bodies, so like blood sport. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river in the clay of its shores at sharp bends. It is said to climb the shores even at daytime in search of food. Its diet is said to be entirely vegetable. This feature disagrees with a possible explanation as a myth. The preferred plant was shown to me. It is kind of a liana with large white blossoms, with a milky sap and apple-like fruits." And there are indeed lianas in the Congo that are like sort of apple-like fruits. At the Sumbo River, he was shown a path said to have been made by this animal in order to get its food. The path was fresh and there were plants of the described type nearby, but since there were too many tracks of elephants, hippos, and other large mammals, it was impossible to make out a particular spoor with any amount of certainty. So yeah, there's von Stein's account.
I thought, I liked his account because, like I said, like I actually looked into a bit of what he was saying with like things like the lianas with apple-like fruits, and those exist. The interesting thing about that would be, I can't imagine, for one, there's not many elephants in the Congo, and two, there's not many hippos either, really. So and I don't think either of those would actually eat apple-like fruits off lianas. Lianas are kind of like a vine that like attached to trees in like rainforests. So I can't imagine, it's not, it wouldn't be the typical thing you would see like either of those animals eating. Maybe. I don't actually know what I'm talking about. So, but according to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. But it's a fair thing because like they're referencing elephants and hippos and other large mammals in his quote. So obviously he's aware of these animals, and the natives are too, and they're saying it's something different, which is pretty interesting,
Yeah. Now, what do you, if anything, do you think that the locals would have anything to gain by creating a Mokele Mbembe?
I don't think they'd have anything to gain by creating it. And I think if we're looking at these times, the early sort of 20th century, I don't know if they'd have anything to gain from it there as well by making these stories up. When we get to kind of contemporary expeditions, which we'll probably look at a little bit later, I think it gets a bit more squirrely then. Like I think they know what to tell tours to get them interested. But back then, the only thing I can think of is that there's some sort of folklore. I mean, I guess, if you imagine being in a jungle, it's probably real easy to partially see something that looks like a crazy animal. You know what I mean? It's possible, I guess.
I think that there's so many weird noises and sounds and things that would happen in a rainforest, especially somewhere like the Congo, where you have such big animals like frequently there. It is possible that it could be absolutely anything. There's another tale in 1927, and this is from a guy called Alfred Aloysius Smith, who worked for the British Trading Company in what is now Gabon in the late 1800s. Briefly mentions in his 1927 memoir the Jagonini and Amali. So this is not even the same name as Mokele Mbembe, but different name. And he says, "Aye, and behind the Cameroon, there's things living we know nothing about. I could have made books about many things. The Jagonini, they say, is still in the swamps and rivers. Giant diver at me, comes out of the water and devours people. Old men'll tell you what their grandfather saw, but they believe it's there. Same as the Amali I've always taken it to be. I've seen the Amali's footprint, about the size of a good frying pan in circumference, and 3 claws. Apatosaurus prints look like 3 claws instead of 5. Yeah, so I did a bit of research into prints when I read this, like different animal prints and things like that. The interesting one was an Apatosaurus, which would actually look like Mokele, has a print that would sort of look similar to what they're saying. It wouldn't be exact, but it could be misconstrued as something like that. But this guy kind of sounds like a pirate or something, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, I love the way he starts it with "aye." He sounds like the guy, the captain from Jaws, and he tells you about the shark eating your face or whatever.
Behind the Cameroon. What does that even mean?
Behind the Cameroon.
Well, what do you reckon? Do you reckon Amali and Mokele are the same thing? Do you reckon that he's sort of it's a totally different story, or what do you think?
I'd say maybe you have different tribes potentially that call it different things. Like this tribe calls it Nsanga, and this tribe calls it Mokele, and this tribe calls it Amali, but they're trying to express the same thing, It is interesting that apparently this guy, Alfred Aloysius Smith, but he said that he gave a chiseled out cave painting of the Amali to Ulysses S. Grant. Yeah. So I suppose at some point people were drawing pictures of this brontosaurus, let's say, on the inside of a cave, which is pretty interesting.
And there was apparently broken and splintered ivory in elephants' graveyards over there. So, I mean, obviously ivory would take quite strong jaws to break, or maybe potentially feet if they were to walk on the ivory, which an Apatosaurus would have quite a large body. And I would imagine it would be able to shatter some ivory if it walked on it, possibly.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think, I think from reading some of those reports, I think some of those guys are credible. Maybe some less than others, like the dude fucking talking like Jack Sparrow. I don't believe that dude at all.
No, I like his swagger though. I have an image of him in my head, and he's definitely the coolest of the 3 guys.
The interesting thing that I wanted to talk about is because, well, both of us are dinosaur nerds like that. Like, we both love dinosaurs. Yeah. So I did some research again on, okay, so let's talk about the credibility. Like, obviously the world, which I'm sure most people realize, but like when you're talking millions of years ago, hundreds of millions of years ago, in like the Cretaceous period, for example, when dinosaurs actually existed, the makeup of the planet was quite different. There was different plants, the continents looked different. everything was just different. It was not like it is today. And obviously over millions of years, the planet has changed so much. And even nowadays, they're talking about humans influencing the planet, and we've only been around a small amount of time. So is it possible that these two animals, there's the Barosaurus and the Giraffatitan, both of those guys actually,
yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, both of those guys were around the Congo area, but millions of years ago. So do you think it's possible that a cluster survived after all these millions of years?
Oh man, yeah. Like I want it to be true. I really want it to be true. I wouldn't say so. I don't think something this big. Like I'm just looking at the pictures of Giraffatitan and Barosaurus there. I mean, these are big animals, like really big animals. But I suppose, yeah, I'm thinking of it with my little Irish brain, where everything's a small island. Like, I imagine the jungle and the trees are so vast and huge as well that maybe it hides something like that.
Well,
But
like the ocean, so the thing to remember as well is, like, things have survived from those times. So that is one thing in the case for it. I mean, like we were saying earlier, the coelacanth, and I mean even alligators and crocodiles existed in some form all that time ago. As did like turtles and
yeah,
things
that's
like
true.
that.
That's true.
So I mean, like we were saying earlier, it is possible in some slight sort of way. There was also the Nigersaurus lived there too, but we're sort of wanting to sort of shy away from him in case we mispronounce it at any time. Because
yeah,
if you're,
but he's kind of a cool, like a beaky dinosaur. Like he's kind of cool looking as well.
yeah, because if you were to say like the degenerate Nigersaurus, you could get in trouble, I'd say, if you said it wrong.
Yeah, you gotta be careful about that, especially when you're two little white Irish guys who don't know anything about anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so we've sort of established the plausibility of it. I mean, I think the most compelling case for is just simply that the Congo is so big, right, and it's so wild.
Yeah,
and also that things exist in our ocean that are millions of years old. I suppose that's the most compelling things you could say, isn't it? Really.
I mean, is it worth talking about? And again, I'm no paleontologist or whatever, but I remember hearing before that the reason that dinosaurs were so big was due to the way Earth's atmosphere would have been, 65 million years ago or
oxygen
whatever.
content.
So is it possible that, yeah. So like, would our Earth be able to sustain an animal that big nowadays?
Actually, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Interestingly, I actually read a really cool thing. Sorry to cut you off there, but about some of the sauropods, dinosaurs like this, some of the very large herbivores, would actually get stuck in the forests that they were born in. So like they'd give birth in a forest, and if they didn't leave by a certain age, they'd actually get trapped there and die.
Because they were so big, they just couldn't get
out. Yeah, they couldn't navigate. So like I think it was either a brachiosaurus maybe, but they reckon that they would give birth in forests for protection and shelter, but sometimes like they would get trapped in there, and they would have to try, and if they didn't get out in a certain amount of time, they'd basically get stuck in there. Whether that's been disproven or not now, I don't know, but this was definitely a theory that I read about.
Well, I mean, how do you even disprove a theory like that, right? Like, I'm sure it's possible that it happened,
Yeah.
I guess what'd be really sort of almost creepier than that, because like I'm looking at Barosaurus and Giraffatitan here, and they just look so big, because you have the person for scale in the museum beside them. So I suppose, just for anyone listening, this thing with its neck, when it's not on its hind legs, is still, I don't know, maybe, what would you say, 10, 15 people tall?
Yeah, and like,
that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, they're very tall. Yeah, there would be 10, 15 people tall, probably. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, really, really big. But I suppose with the atmosphere like that, what creeps me out is like, when you think about the spiders and the insects and stuff that we have today, they're quite small. With an atmosphere like that, like these things are probably maybe elephant size, giraffe size, stuff like that, which are some of the biggest animals. Can you imagine how big like a tarantula would have been back in the Jurassic period?
Yeah, yeah, it would have been like frightening actually. Well, there's that period
Us,
called
yeah.
the Carboniferous, which I think is actually that's a really interesting time for the planet. So if anyone's interested in actual fact and like things like that, do look up the Carboniferous period, because that's when, like you said, it was when insects were their largest. So you had like dragonflies that
Yeah.
were, like 6 foot wingspan, things like that. But that's actually when all the Earth's oil was made, basically, because at that time, and this kind of sounds really weird, and it must have looked very strange. There was no bacteria that could digest decomposing wood. It couldn't decompose wood. So basically, what would happen is trees would fall and they wouldn't decay. There was no bacteria to eat the wood. So basically, what happened was wood just kept stacking and stacking and stacking on top of each other. And eventually, that basically formed oil, coal, all that good stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, now I absolutely butchered that, but that is the sort of loose idea of how we got our reserves of oil and things like that, was all from that period, and only because there wasn't a bacteria or whatever you want to say that could decompose wood, and that didn't come till after, in sort of more modern times, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, that's crazy. I didn't know that. Like, so it's just that basically it's almost as if in order to make the fossils and to make the oil, there was no natural predator, not a
Yeah.
predator, but you know what I mean, something that would attack that. So it just grew and grew and grew until it kind of mutated into something else.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
The thing with the pygmies, like the pygmies are basically the main sort of source of Mokele Mbembe sort of stories, and those are the guys putting it out. But like, as I was reading it, I was sort of thinking, okay, so you're a pygmy, is like a dog, not like a giraffe to you. Like, is, you know what I mean? Like,
They're pretty small guys. They're pretty small guys.
yeah, but like, when they see a hippo, like we see a hippo and it's pretty big, right? But
Mm.
when they see a hippo, it's gonna be like, what the fuck? It must be so much bigger, like, because they're only little dudes at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So is it?
Well, especially like because you're what, 6'5", six
Yeah,
foot six or something,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm 6'2", so it's very rare that aside from you, it's very rare that there's another human around me that's bigger than me.
A
So
German
for these
Shepherd looks
guys,
like a terrier to me.
but that's, yeah, especially back in those, you start seeing, like, because you're not going to see a hippo every day in the
No.
jungle. You're not going to see, an elephant, or, well, maybe you see elephants, I don't know, but I'm imagining you don't see crocodiles every day. They're big animals. So with these guys, I guess they come back with these stories. It's like no different to us going out on the weekend, and you sort of exaggerate a bit to make your story a bit better
Yeah,
than it
yeah.
was.
Well, you'd imagine. So the thing about Mokele Mbembe is that when you put all these different animals that existed in the Congo together, you can sort of form a dinosaur out of that. So, like, if you take the tail of an alligator or a crocodile, the body of a hippo, the tusks of an elephant, or the long trunk of an elephant, if you were to sort of compose all that, make a composition of those animals, you could come out with some type of weird dinosaur looking thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially because, like, you were telling me that you've seen in some videos, wasn't it, that people would basically go into the jungle to these pygmy tribes, and they would have a card with different animals on it that have, like, a fucking
Oh
a
yeah.
sparrow, a dog, and then a fucking dinosaur, and they'd be like, which one lives here, right?
Yeah, so I think what I when I was doing some research on it, it was kind of saying that, say, the first expeditions that would have gone in would have kind of heard their stories, their folklore, and then as they were discovering more and more dinosaurs, I guess they would have gone there trying to find specific dinosaurs, or trying to find a dinosaur. So maybe they bring the natives images and say, oh, look, do any of these live here? As people keep coming out, at a certain point, they're giving money to the natives to bring them around or whatever. So I'm kind of curious, are the natives kind of just going, oh yeah, we have this brontosaurus looking thing here, because they know what they're looking for, so they're just kind of telling them what they want to hear and bringing them into different parts of the jungle, telling them stories and making basically some sort of, third world tourism out of it, in a sense.
Yeah. I watched
Um,
a good video on Mokele, and he mentioned as well that is it possible that Mokele was basically a folk tale to keep the kids out of the bad parts of the jungle, you know?
yeah, yeah. Well, I know there was a video I watched. There was like a voice, because you just type into YouTube Mokele Mbembe and see what comes out at you.
Hmm.
And there was a voice, like a 10-minute documentary, where a guy goes in to ask the natives about Mokele Mbembe or whatever, and so he's asking him to show him Mokele Mbembe. He said that their group kind of split off, so he was there trying to find a dinosaur. Someone else decided they wanted to try and film pygmy porn, and then someone else went to try and like find out about the drug trade, so like just went really bananas. But he was like, no, I'm here for the dinos.
Right.
So he went out to this tribe anyway, and they were like, do you want to see Mokele Mbembe? And he was like, yeah, I want to see him. Like, are you sure? They asked him several times, and he said yes. And they gave him this alcohol that he said just tasted like pure gasoline,
Yeah, tarps.
Yeah, like really strong, like moonshiny stuff. And then he said he kind of like tripped on it a bit, like kind of like a psychoactive drug. He said like he felt like his face was eating itself and all this sort of stuff. And then they brought out what I can only describe as a guy in a straw skirt with just grass coming out everywhere. So like you couldn't see any of him, and he I guess looked like a dinosaur. Like, I mean, maybe.
What if he had a dinosaur Mickey underneath the skirt?
Oh, if he had a dinosaur, I'd say he could have, because those pygmy lads, they're short, but they make up for it.
Comes out of the skirt and goes like, oh.
Like the neck of a brontosaurus.
Like, oh. Starts attacking him.
It makes that noise. Yeah, I definitely think that, like, I think that some of these tourists, and I certainly wouldn't want to be well, I mean, how can you be more disrespectful than saying their Mickeys are Mokele Mbembe's neck and face? I don't know. But I think they might be, saying certain things for cash, or maybe they're the point where there's a sort of blending of folklore and reality. It'd be like if we still said, like, I don't know, Cuchulainn, like, we know that that's a folklore tale, so we know, while it might have been based on someone, him turning into a demon and all that sort of stuff probably didn't happen.
Well,
but maybe for them,
yourself,
they well, of course. But I know their culture obviously wouldn't have come as far as ours. And I don't mean that in like, they're probably better off. Like we're it sounds, I don't mean it that way. I mean, like, we're all here dying from like bat virus or whatever because we're flying across.
You're getting into degenerate. You're getting into degenerate Nitrosaurus territory there, saying that.
Yeah, I'm really not trying to say anything with hate in my heart about anyone. Just that they obviously don't have the same kind of technology we have, and so maybe believe in folklore and stuff like that. Again, look, I'd rather live in the jungle, but I would like to clear Final Fantasy VII Remake first. But yeah, so I think it's possible, because I know there's a story of a Japanese expedition in 1981, and effectively the guides confined them and wouldn't let them leave because there was a dispute over the amount of money that should be paid for the expedition.
Imagine that you're tied up and you're in the middle of the Congo, and you've got like a pygmy overlord with his Mokele Mbembe coming out of his skirt. Like, wow, hitting you over the forehead with it. Over
the forehead. Yeah, and then that guy who was in the group with you to try and find the dinosaur, who decided he was going to go watch pygmy porn, has just hit the jackpot.
Then slapping you on the head.
That's the sound. Oh my god, we've derailed.
All right, so
we were doing so good.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the young art creationism and how Mokele Mbembe ties into that. So this story has it all, really. Young art creationism is a form of creationism which holds as a central tenet that the earth and its life forms were created in their present forms by supernatural acts of a deity between approximately 6,000 to 10,000 years ago. Its primary adherents are Christians who believe that God created the earth in 6 days, in contrast with old earth creationism, which holds literal interpretations of Genesis that are compatible with the scientifically determined ages of the earth and universe, basically saying that many elements of the Bible are metaphorical. Why do they give a shit? If young earth creationists can prove the existence of dinosaurs in some backwater part of the world, then it would help to validate their belief that the world is only 10k years old. So that's a good point. So basically, if a cryptid dinosaur does exist, such as Loch Ness or Mokele Mbembe, then that sort of proves their point that no, they live alongside us not millions of years ago. So, God created them basically, right?
Yeah, pretty much so. I mean, if they're saying, because they're saying carbon dating can't be, it's not very accurate when it goes past 7,000 years old. So I think if you do carbon date something, you can't really say with certainty how old it is past 7,000 or 8,000 years old, which they kind of use that as an argument to say that the Earth isn't older than that,
Yeah. So what about Noah's Ark then?
Yeah. So I can't remember reading anything about Noah's Ark, but I know I went to like a religious primary school and Catholic secondary school and all, but they weren't very dino heavy. But yeah, there's never anything about it, like a velociraptor getting on the ark with his like lady friend or whatever. I suppose they're married at this point, aren't they? You're not allowed to do the hanky if you're not married.
Definitely 100% married.
Yeah. Would you say you ever asked her to clip her toenails? Because them raptors have fairly.
I'd say, yeah. If they had dinosaurs on board, I mean, you would have to have your own dinosaur deck, of course, wouldn't you? I mean, they're really going to fuck up all the mammals. Like, forget about mammals. Mammals are shite,
Yeah, and even the mammals, like what do you do when you have tigers and I don't know sheep on the same? Like, there must have been a really good logistic plan on that ark because. Like animals eat other animals,
Well, they were all scared. Maybe they just, they said, right, lads, until this is all over, let's just sort of cuddle,
Tofu, soy boys.
Soy boys, tofu boys is what you were going to say.
Yeah. I know tofu's made out of soy, so I just
you were nearly there.
That one.
You'll be saying edamame next or whatever the fuck it is.
Edamame is delicious.
Yeah, well, sure, it's all the same, isn't it? It's all so. What's your? So, do you reckon that this is all just natives taking the piss? Then, really?
I think there's probably some natives who really do believe it. And 100% believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's many who could really. I know there's eyewitness reports of people saying they've seen it tried to attack them and stuff like that. And I think some of those reports are old enough to not have a kind of a ulterior motive, that whether it was or it wasn't Mokele Mbembe, something attacked them, and that could have been a hippo or something like that,
Yeah, the guy, Rory Nugent, he kind of has an interesting little anecdote there about it. Do you want to read that one?
Oh, yeah. So he was in the Congo in search of Mokele Mbembe, and he wrote a book about his experience called Drums Along the Congo. But he says he saw an elegant French curve moving through the water, which obviously proves that there is a giant dinosaur living in
a French curve.
I don't know, man. But I keep getting that, like, an image of Kate Winslet asking Leonardo DiCaprio to draw her.
I thought. That's exactly what I thought.
Right.
Yeah.
It probably says more about us.
Yeah, it probably does, yeah. But he's not really a reliable source, I don't think, no?
Well, he believes it might have been the head of Mokele Mbembe, but also was like, no. He said he didn't know, but he believed it could have been the head. But he said that the guides were screaming about a god beast. And this, I suppose, ties in with the thing, like whether it was part of the show, whether it was somebody swimming under the water with flippers, pushing a cardboard piece across the lake, I couldn't tell you. So he's saying, look, it might have been a big giant thing, or it might have been these pygmies basically giving me what I wanted to see.
Yeah. It's like, part of me is like, what do the pygmies have to gain by saying, yeah, there's a dinosaur here? Unless money passed hands. And, you know,
Mhm.
it's kind of it's a
Well,
weird
I'd
one
say
for me.
certainly nowadays, yeah, I think nowadays there's definitely money passing hands, you know? Like if you're gonna
Absolutely.
hire a guide to bring you out somewhere, yeah. So maybe not in the early 20th century, but certainly now for sure, yeah.
Well, the tour that I was actually looking up, that was, I think, I said it earlier. I think it was actually 15 grand, um,
Mm.
to go on this tour. I have it up here in front of me. So if you want to go, if Mokele Mbembe has really inspired you, if listening to this episode has inspired you about the wilderness of the Congo, you can take the Lake Tele expedition by going to congotravelandtours.com. And it's actually, sorry, it's $9,000 and it takes 12 days.
Ah,
And it's just to give you a little bit of a thingy. This is as real as it gets. Most locals can't even move or travel in the area, and it's open for 2017. Let's see what else. Apologies for the all large caps, but it is for good reason. I don't know, like it's all like demented babble. There's like,
demented babble.
let's see here. Listen, the area this tour visits are homes to hundreds of thousands of undocumented gorillas and other large primates, dozens of tribes of pygmies, the largest snake ever recorded in history, hordes of new species discovered by science a year, and yes, even a rumored species of giant dinosaur that eats elephants, living in the thick jungles of the Lake Tele Reserve, which nobody has ever been deep inside enough to find.
Ooh.
So there's a thing here that just looks like they're making it up. In 2016, a far deeper and smaller but more hidden lake was found just once due north of Tele, a few weeks into the bush. New birds and mammals, crocodile nests, thousands of endemic primates in the trees, new fish and clouds of butterflies were described there. We are attempting to ascertain the GPS of this place, but nobody has found it since January 2016. There's still a lot to find and little explored in this region, 1.5 times the size of Belgium and uninhabited. So, and then
Jesus. It's
in
1.5 times the size of Belgium.
yeah, but sure, Belgium's fucking tiny.
Ah, yeah, but that's still big.
All right, yeah, I suppose. there's he goes, this is the most difficult, this is in all bold capitals, this is the most difficult trip in Africa, not for blockbusters, ego elevators, or passport stamp collectors. This is more like Jurassic Park than Disneyland. So I mean, he's really selling it to me there, to be honest with you. Do you know, I was kind of
Yeah, if I had 9 grand lying around, I would go.
I wouldn't at all. Because like I don't mind a bit of a trek. I don't mind the wilderness at all. I'm definitely not shy of the wilderness. But just reading through, he does a day-by-day breakdown on the website, which is definitely, if you guys listening want to check it out, congotravelandtours.com. Read the day-by-day description of what he does, and it doesn't sound too good to me, honestly. I mean, it's like it does sound like, remember me and you went mountain climbing in Snowdon?
Oh yeah,
that was like 4 days. I had enough. 3 days, 2 weeks in the Congo.
I think got trench foot.
Yeah, trench foot.
Yeah.
So to sum it up, really, how your final hot take then on Mokele Mbembe? What is it?
My hot take. I think Mokele Mbembe. I think that a sauropod, brontosaurus type creature probably did come from there at some point. I mean, we know it did at some point, Mm-hmm. I mean, potentially it was one of the last dinosaurs to die off, maybe.
No, actually, no, it wouldn't have been. Actually, that's actually sorry to cut you off. That would have been actually a really good point to make. Is that the herbivores actually died first in the extinction events because all the plant life died out first. So it was the carnivores that lived longer.
So because what I was going to say was potentially it lived alongside people for a period of time or something, but obviously not. Yeah, in which case, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. I think that it's.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think that I don't think that it exists currently, to be honest. but I would like it to exist, I must say. And that's going to be true of most things that we talk about on this show.
I think the real Mokele Mbembe might be the friends we made along the way. And we met like Aloysius, the pygmy lord.
Yeah.
Von Stein. These are all great characters. But yeah, I mean, look, it's not impossible. It absolutely isn't impossible. You can't 100% say this is not true, because it is a little bit possible, just a small bit. Do I think it's real? Yeah, no, probably not. Do I want it to be real? Yes, absolutely. If any of our listeners are generous enough, you can fund an expedition for us to go to the Congo, and we will actually do a vlog in the Congo. Looking for Mokele Mbembe.
Congo vlog.
Yeah, literally, like. But Congo's like super dangerous right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd say so. I'd say with kind of just nature, militias, all that sort of stuff going on there, I'd say everything's, you'd want to be fairly careful, especially if you're a little pasty. Like, I'm a little pasty ginger lad. I'd say the sun would kill me before anything else got a chance to.
What if like we were to write like some sort of fan fiction of like Mokele Mbembe versus the militia groups in the Congo?
I thought you were going somewhere completely different with that. I thought you were going like, you know those women that are writing that fiction about like Bigfoot takes them when they're camping and they have some sort of illicit like sex affair with them. I thought you were saying Mokele Mbembe finds you and me and brings us back to her nest where it's a girl, Mokele Mbembe, of course, like really hot Mokele Mbembe. Yeah, it's really super hot Mokele Mbembe. And and then we sort of get stuck in some sort of like submissive soy boy relationship.
Soy boy sauropod.
I don't even, man. Soy boy sauropod. I don't even know what a soy boy is. I think it sounds funny.
Basically, a soy boy is like someone that drinks. It's like a vegan. That's the soy boy. Yeah, the soy boy sauropod tryst would be good fan fiction, and the pygmy chieftain can come in at some point as well to spice it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably not real, but I think it's a very fascinating tale, and I think any tale about dinosaurs in our modern time deserves a little extra bit of attention, because, well, for one, there's nothing that really represents dinosaurs in our time. So I think anything that does mention dinosaurs, it's a little bit more interesting, because it's a bit more off the wall than, say, something a lot more easily explained. Like, for example, Bigfoot, you could say, is a bear or something that lives in that area. A dinosaur is a bit more off the wall, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these cryptids are generally not something the sheer size of Mokele Mbembe. A lot of them are, while they're quite big, you're not talking like just dozens of meters into the air big, that kind of way. So that's kind of a difference in it. That's really fun. And as well, like it I suppose then the same is true of Bigfoot. Like, it did exist, like Gigantopithecus did exist before. So is it possible that some of these things have lived into the present age in sort of these areas that haven't grown in technology and industry with the rest of the world? I mean, I guess it could be possible.
Yeah, there's those there was a population of woolly mammoth that outlived the mainland population by quite a while, and they were actually pygmy mammoths, because they were I think when there is a term for it, but like when they're on there's no predators, they sort of shrink in size. I think that's what it is, something like that. Or if they're competing for the same food source, I don't know. But basically, there was a population of mammoths that survived way into more modern times, and they were a lot smaller.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So it's just the same could happen,
It's totally, all this is possible. And I think that's the fun of it, is that it's very difficult to say that this stuff, you can't say with 100% certainty, like, that this isn't real. I guess one of the ways I try to think of it is, like, if you think about a black swan, like, there was no such thing as a black swan before someone found a black swan. So say, oh no, there's a black swan, people would be like, what are you talking about? That's crazy. things become very obvious and very normalized when they happen, when we're aware of them. Like here we are in the coronavirus, everyone's staying in, no one's going out, there's a huge pandemic, and it feels normal. We're talking about dinosaurs like it's 2018 again.
We'll always
You
talk
know what
about
I mean? So
dinosaurs.
we'll never not talk about dinosaurs, for sure.
I think to close out the episode, which is episode 1 in the bag, I think which is I'm feeling very proud of. I think that what we just I think to close it out, I think what I would like to say is, bear with us. If you've listened this long, chances are you'll probably listen to the next one. So thank you for that. But also, bear with us while we sort out our technology, formatting, all of that type of stuff. As we do more episodes, it will get better. And we will have Facebook and Twitter and all that. So if you're listening, please do find us on those things, and those will be the name that we go with, which we don't know yet. And please do find us, and any recommendations or things that we should talk about are always appreciated. We'd like to hear from you. Please give us, what do you do on podcasts? Do you give them 5 stars? Do you subscribe? What?
Yeah, I think you can, wherever you download your podcast, subscribe, like, write a review. Even if you're like, these 2 sandwiched paddies wasted 2 hours of my life. Yeah, write that review if that was how you felt. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and do and don't report us for Nigersaurus or pygmy porn or anything like that. That would be a plus.
No, but like none of that was said with hate and arts. That was like they're just words and concepts that are strange. Like, you know, there's no Jesus. I'd love to live out in the Congo. I think a lot of these places that haven't, you know, moved with industry and technology, like maybe they're way happier than we are. Seems to be, you know.
Maybe. And I'd like to just point out here the format that we've done with the episode is that we do like a Google document, and we're reading from it in part, and then we're sort of taking ideas from it and whatever. And Eamon actually did the proper document, but his last point is to say goodbye to the listeners. So
just in case we forgot, they're just listening, being like, "Is this over or what's happening?"
And I was going to say as well, the other bullet point is outro music, and since we don't have outro music, do you want to sing "Take Mbembe Away"?
Take Mbembe away.
That was good.
You're a dinosaur. We don't know if you exist. Mokele Mbembe. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Yeah, that's enough of that. Thanks for listening, guys. Do you have any closing notes?
No, appreciate you taking the time to listen to it. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll hopefully be back soon with an actual name and actual music and more professionalism and stuff like that.
Nah, never professionalism.
Nah.
Right, sure, we'll leave it at that then. So, see you people. Cheers for listening.